Kalimera, kalispera, kalinichta. No matter where in this wild, wacky, and sometimes wonderful world you might be, thank you for making the Highbury Squad part of your day. And the spoiling continues with the one and only Podfather. Let's rock and roll, kids.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Hola, welcome back to Squad Central. For those of you listening live, thanks for joining. And most of you who will be listening on replay and our audio platforms, thank you as well for making us part of your day. He's back at Squad Central, the one and only Mr. Andrew Mangan, the Podfather himself.
Hey, Sophie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm coping with everything mostly. You know,
I have to say, when I hear your dulcet tones, I feel, very calm,
That's
yeah. So, and they're getting spoiled because the two velvet voices of the Arsenal community, we got you today, and then we've got Signor Palmer on Monday. So all is well in the Squaddy universe.
Well, that's it. You use the other shows to get everybody worked up, and then being Clive can kind of soothe people with our voices. That's what it takes.
We had Elliot on this week too, and Elliot could go either way, But
listen, I love Elliot, but I'm not going to say he's got the most soothing voice in the world. I won't say that,
oh, good stuff. Good evening, Squaddies. Hello. Good afternoon. It's morning for me. I'm still half awake. I do have my double espresso with me, so all should be well. Thank you to everyone in live chat. And Andrew, before I get stuck into our SWOT analysis, I love doing this. Last time we did was with my good Greek friend, Harry. I don't know why I said Greek. Well, obviously because we're both Greek. So we tried to champion that as much as possible, the two of us. Yeah. We're always here to promote the souvlaki, me and Harry. So I love to do it. And when I get somebody like you on, especially during a season that's a little mixed, we get kind of a bird's eye view on your thoughts overall. But before we do that, Champions League, this dastardly team of ours, and that bum Kai Havertz, damn that guy. I loved the professionalism and the maturity of getting the job done last night. Your take on the Champions League campaign so far, and kind of really putting in a solid performance. Yes, they're not a good side, but you can only play who's in front of you.
That's it, exactly. We had a job to do. We did the job. We seem to be going very, very well in Europe. I think I read or listened or somebody said on commentary, have we yet to concede a goal from open play in the Champions League this season, which is kind of incredible.
Yeah.
And I think it looks really good. We're third in the table. You look down the table, you see Real Madrid, you see PSG, you see Manchester City, you see these big teams, and you realize, hey, we've done a good job here. Because I'm sure that you've done this and I've done this, certainly when trying to analyze our league position. I can look at things that we could do better and things that maybe we should do better and could have done better with. But also, I've had to acknowledge, I think it's important to acknowledge that there are things that have happened to us this season which have been a bit extraordinary, with red cards and injuries and those kinds of things. So you have to factor that into the discussion of how you think Arsenal have done and performed so far in the Premier League. But those things have also been present when we've played European games, and we've coped really, really well. So I think I'm pleased and encouraged by the fact that we look like a mature team in Europe. And when you consider we spent how many years, 6-7 years out of the Champions League, I think that's to the credit of the manager, the team, the coaching staff, and they deserve their props. I know they don't always get them. I know they don't necessarily always deserve them, but I think in this case, spot on. Good win, comfortable, got some goals, rotated the team a bit, kept players fresh. Don't think you could ask for more from last night, really.
Yeah. And real quick, I wanted to ask you, do you think, and I've had this conversation with some of the other guys that have been on the show, do you think their style of play this season, the way Mikel's kind of adopted, his take on how he wants to set the squad up is more suited to a Champions League run than a Premier League run? Is that just kind of a moot point? What's your take on that?
I don't know. It's a good question, actually. I just wonder if in Europe teams are a bit less inclined to just come and sit and defend deep. And maybe there are teams in Europe that even if they do come and sit and defend deep are not as good as Premier League teams at doing it. I think with all due respect to Dinamo Zagreb last night, they weren't great. They weren't great. We forced them backwards. We played a lot of the game in their half. I don't think they necessarily wanted to do it, but maybe they're a bit easier to break down than a Premier League team, which, is probably a little more, has got that extra quality, even teams towards the bottom of the table in the Premier League. So maybe it suits us a little more. Maybe it's just the quality of the opposition in some games as well. But, I think it is encouraging to see us do well in Europe because with the league position the way it is and Liverpool going the way they are, then maybe at some point, your attention turns a little more towards Europe and what you might be able to achieve in the Champions League in that competition.
What's your, as a fan, of course, we all would love to win this one, and it would give us bragging rights that we get kind of slapped over the head with a lot from opposing fans.
Mm.
Do you fancy us this year more than last year, sometimes in unexpected seasons? So this is how I calm myself at night. I don't drink chamomile tea or count sheep. But I've been saying that, the last, not 22-23, but definitely last season, a lot of folks thought we'd win the league. The season prior was the unexpected run. This season, a lot of folks expected us to be up there and potentially winning it. I always say that when you least expect it, it will happen. So I've got this Anfield 89 theory that I've been cooking for the Squaddies that I think that potentially, could happen. And the Champions League, no one really expects us to win it. Do you think we've got a shot, Andrew? Do you believe that this is something this team can achieve?
You never know with knockout football, When you said count sheep there, by the way, I was thinking of a vampire. I don't know, just a vampire. Count sheep? Who's that? I don't think you can rule us out. I think there are probably teams who are better placed or perhaps more favorites. Is that the right way? My English has gone out the window. But, would be better placed to win it. And I think probably have a little bit of an edge on us in terms of attacking quality. That's where I think in this knockout phase of the competition, even if some teams have struggled, when you get the big teams through, when you get someone like Barcelona, who've struggled, the attacking quality and the way some of their players are playing this season, the talent they have available to them, Real Madrid, that's a scary forward line, isn't it? With Bellingham and Mbappe and Vinicius and Rodrigo. And you're looking at that going, we might have one of the best defenses in world football, but they would be well and truly tested by those players. And I think, conversely, we're maybe just a little bit short in that sense. We don't necessarily have that level of star quality, particularly without Bukayo Saka. But you just never know in knockout football. I can't say I fancy us because, I've seen lots and lots of Champions League campaigns down the years and they haven't come to fruition. We came very close once and got to a semi-final another time, I know, but I'm open to being pleasantly surprised. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I think we all are. All right, let's get stuck into the topic of the day. It's our SWOT analysis. And for those of you out there, for those marketers out there, you know what this is. This is all about examining a product, a brand's, don't hit me. I know we are a brand and we're not a product, but we are. Okay, so don't come at me. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So join into the chat and give us your YouTube comments as well. Strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities are generally something you can control as a brand or a product, and the threats are things that are exterior, things that will come and for example, if you're a weather company and there's a tsunami, there's nothing really you could do about that, Andrew.
No,
There's really
predicted.
nothing. So let's start off with the strengths. And I'd like you to kind of look at this of maybe Arsenal, yes, pedigree wise, but more so right now in the moment, what you think the club's team's core strengths are.
Are we talking about like from a footballing perspective, or if, for example, I'm just sort of looking, I'm on the outside and I'm looking at this as an organization as a whole?
I think both. So we can give both. So for me right now, the strengths would be on a footballing side, Miles Lewis, Skelly, Waneri, this crop of Haylenders coming
Sure.
through,
Okay.
I think are a total strength. And I mean, I think Arsenal's pedigree as a club is a strength as well. So we could look at it from both sides.
I mean, I would say defensively we are very strong. On the football pitch, I think we've got like all the left backs in the world basically, and we've also got some brilliant defenders. I know it's a big if, but if we have available to us at any one time Ben White, Jurriën Timber, William Saliba, Gabriel, Ricardo Calafiori, Takahiro Tomiyasu, Miles Lewis Skelly, we've got a lot going on there. And then I haven't even mentioned Kivior or Zinchenko or Tierney, who we have as strength and depth in those positions. So I think defensively, we have a fantastic platform. If I'm looking at the overall team, I'm going outside Arsenal, I'm looking at it as a club, I'm saying it's in London. As you say, the pedigree is there, but I also think at this moment in time, people recognize Arsenal as a serious football club, right? We're not a joke anymore. We used to be a bit of a laughing stock because of how we operated and because of who we brought in and because of some of the players that we had available to us and because of the way that we played and the results that we had. I think we've got a manager who, even if externally people might not warm to him, nobody can argue that he's not doing a very good job. I think we are an attractive destination for, the top 5% of players in the world, and maybe the top 1% of players, they go to Bayern or they go to Real Madrid or they're financially persuaded to go to Manchester City or, but I think outside of that, we've got a great draw for the best players in the world. We can attract those best players now. So I think right now, if I'm looking at Arsenal, I'm saying this is, in stock market terms, this is a stock that's performing very, very well. It could go even higher with the right level of investment, et cetera, et cetera. So I think as an outfit, despite the fact we're all craving trophies and everything else, I think we have an organization and a football club that will be extremely attractive to most footballers and to pretty much every other team in the Premier League, or most of the teams in the Premier League would like to be where we are and have been for the last couple of seasons.
I would agree with that. And when you're talking about, it's funny because obviously you don't need to be a rocket scientist to think about these two and what they bring to the table. And then, someone like Declan Rice, who feels like he's come into some of his best form as well. And then you've got the kind of the spine as well that carries through Gabby and Saliba with Saka and Odegaard. And you mentioned that team, and having Benjamin White back is going to be huge. Martinelli finding form again. David Raya has been so solid. Calafiori can stay fit. That's really good. The strength as well is that team spirit, what they've kind of cultivated together as a group. As we shift into weaknesses, Go on, mate. Yeah.
I just want to say as well, you hit on something really important there. I think there is a culture at the club now, which is a real strength. And that strength is a desire to win. And it is a desire to keep raising the standards high. And that goes from Arteta to the players as well. I think they go about their jobs in a very serious way, so that sort of shifting of the culture from one which is like, well, we're Arsenal, we exist, we're here, we play the games, we win some, we lose some, everyone goes a bit mad, and you go home at the end of the season, hope for a little bit better next season, and then repeat to fade. Those kind of mistakes. I think that aspect is important. What you just said there, that culture that we have is part of why we're an attractive destination.
Mm-hmm. And also that culture, I think, Andrew's shifted back into the fan base as well. And of course, maybe we could look at some of the fan bases as a weakness, maybe. But the majority of Arsenal fans love this team and have embraced the Arsenal 2.0, the new personality, the DNA of the players, what the manager and Edu kind of started together, and Mikel continues to grow and to build. And I think having that is also exceptionally important, that the majority of the fan base have bought into what the club is doing and have become an extension of that new culture.
Sure, there's a unity at the club from across all levels. I think that wasn't there. All these departments and all, fans felt separate from the club, team felt separate from the club, the owners certainly felt separate from the club. The manager, if you want to go back to Arsene Wenger, was there for such a long time. It was impossible to unlink him from the club. But had he lost sight of what made him, such a brilliant manager, and certainly the what's the word I'm looking for here? It was fractious among the fan base, and that wasn't good. And now there is, for the most part, you never please all the people all the time, as we know, but for the most part, there is a sense of unity that I think transmits itself from the pitch to the stands, and vice versa, from the stands to the pitch as well. And that's healthy. I think that is a very healthy way for any football club to be able to operate. You have to work at it. It doesn't happen by accident, but I think it is healthy.
Yeah, a couple of seasons ago on the US tour, I had the chance to actually was part of the Champions Tour. Roberto Carlos was there, and Franco Baresi, and Gilberto Silva was representing Arsenal. And I had the chance to talk to all of them. And it's really funny because I think sometimes fans think that these guys don't care, or, their job is done, they move on. But one of the things Gilberto said to me that kind of has stuck with me since is the sense of Mikel and Edu, when they took over in terms of trying to attract players, maybe when the brand was weak, is they were able to transmit something that not other people who have played for the club could, which is why some fans feel that director of football role should be someone who's been associated with the club. But what Gilberto was saying to me is they can transmit an experience, a taste, what it means to kind of wear the badge in, the good times, and also, what it means to wear it and the weight of it, and how to carry yourself maybe in the bad times. And that really stuck with me. What he said.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to sort of lash out when things aren't going well and say this guy doesn't care and they don't care, and but we've also been through periods, I think, where we've been a bit scarred and traumatized because we have seen the club operate in a suboptimal way, and we have seen players who don't really seem to care, and we've experienced that, but I don't think that's part of who we are now. I think anybody who doesn't care wouldn't be at this club. That's it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to, which I think will primarily kind of, I don't know, we'll see what you think. I know that you've been around the club and on the tours and stuff, and we've both had the opportunity to talk to the owner, to Josh Kroenke in particular. I think you've met Big Stan as well. You're the big cheese, Andrew. Do you think, now I think there's two polarizing components to the weakness section. One, in some fans' eyes, I don't believe this at all. I actually think, and I get pelters for it, I believe we have some of the best owners in the Premier League. I know that they want the owners to put their hands in their pockets a la Roman Abramovich, but when you look at PSR, of course, that's kind of flatlined now, but FFP and UEFA regulations, modern day football just isn't as easy. And the other polarizing component to this as well, which I'll get to, but in a second, do you think the owners are a strength or a weakness?
I think they have been a weakness because
from 28 prior to 2018 or
yeah.
over. Yeah.
I think the ownership situation was a weakness. Maybe not necessarily KSE themselves or the Cronkies themselves, although I've been critical of them. But I think they were happy to exist in a sort of a Cold War status, which, you know, when Usmanov owned 35% or whatever it was, you know, or 30 odd percent, and you had the Cronkies operating in a very different way then to the way they operate now. And maybe, you know, there are very good business explanations for that. There's a great, they're not invested till they were fully invested. And maybe, you know, somebody who knows business really well will tell me, well, that's just the way it goes. You know, why would you go all in when some other guy owns 30% of your football club? And if you make it better, you're going to make it more expensive for you to buy him out in the end, right? I get that. It's no good for us, though, is it? As fans, it's no good for us as supporters of the football club. It's no good for the football club itself if there is that kind of stasis at board level, which I think there was. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Now I think they're better, and I don't think you can be as strong as we were or have become without the backing of the owners and the owners actually putting some money in their pockets. You know, they've helped finance deals, you know, deals like Declan Rice, other transfers through the COVID period. There was money to spend. So I think they've been better since they took 100% ownership. No question about that. The question people will ask, though, is sort of like, do they really have that driving ambition? Do they really, really have the driving ambition to push the boat out? I guess you could say that they did with a £100 million signing in Declan Rice, and they have spent a load of money. I'm absolutely not denying that in any way. I think there is, you know, there will be fans who will say, maybe this January, are we getting ahead of ourselves here? Maybe this January was an opportunity that so far we haven't taken. Now, there might also be really good reasons for that. It might not be just down to the ownership. I think we all have to admit that there are issues with the January transfer market and all of that stuff. But could we have been a bit more aggressive and shown a bit more ambition? You know, those are buzzwords that get thrown around a lot when people want transfers. It's all about ambition, and do you have that? But I understand where it comes from. So going back to your question, I think, generally speaking, they are more of a strength than a weakness, but they still have a bit of work to do.
Yeah, and they can go in the same column as well. Both can be true. And you know, I think when you brought up the Declan Rice thing, I think it's kind of like it goes back to when we were talking about before they were fully vested. When you have Ozil and you have Santi and you have Alexis Sanchez, why aren't you getting the same quality in your defense? Or why aren't you getting the same quality in your attack? When you sign Declan Rice and, you know, someone like Timber, why aren't you matching that in other areas of the pitch? And I think fans who propose that argument are valid. And it brings us on to another the most polarizing player, become more polarizing than Ozil. There's no doubt about it in my mind. And that is Kai Havertz. I think so, yeah. I think Kai Havertz has become, okay, maybe not. Ozil's last season was definitely beyond polarizing. I truly believe that Kai Havertz has become more polarizing than Mesut Ozil.
Wow.
And just like Mesut, I think he is a misunderstood player. And, you know, it's funny, we were talking to Rebecca Lowe last week and she said, expectation kills joy. And I think that could be true across results, how you expect the team to perform, transfers, investment from owners, player performance, because we were talking about how we almost won the title and what our expectations are this season and how they've grown over the last 3 years. And I think the expectation of Kai Havertz is sometimes filed in the wrong folder. Everyone expects him to be this pizzazz, crazy number 9. Whereas I think his attributes are so valuable and a little bit different to what people are seeing with a Haaland or a Harry Kane. And because you see those number 9s doing what they do, the expectations are that Kai would fall into the same folder. I don't think he's a weakness. I think he's a strength in this side, especially in the last 2 seasons, and especially from January onwards. He's our top scorer. What do you think about what I've just said, and ultimately your thoughts on Kai?
My thoughts on Kai. I'm going to repeat myself, and if anybody has listened to the Arsecast today, I apologize for repeating myself on this show, right? I think that I understand why there is discussion and debate around Kai Havertz, but I don't think Kai Havertz is the problem. I think what Kai Havertz gives us is, look, it can be hit and miss. He had some bad games in the cup, right? We all know that. But if you look at the goals, what's he scored for Arsenal? Maybe 30 goals since last January, something like that. The issue for me is not Kai Havertz. The issue for me is that we don't have anybody else really to play up front. We don't have Gabriel Jesus anymore, and when we did have Gabriel Jesus, he didn't score. Trossard can do a bit there, but he's not really that guy. Martinelli doesn't play there. Saka doesn't play there. So the issue for me is not Kai Havertz. I like Kai Havertz a lot. I think he's a good player, and I think he will get you a lot of goals over the course of a season. He's never going to be the 30, 35 goal a season player that people want. He's never going to be that striker. But it's the fact that he has to carry such a big burden pretty much all the time. And there are going to be games because of the sort of the work that he puts in, the schedule that he plays to, where it just doesn't happen for him. And I think by his nature as well, there will be games where it doesn't happen for him. I keep Kai Havertz every day of the week. I love the way he works for this team. I love the goals he scores. He frustrates me sometimes, of course. But give the man some help. Give him some help. We need another forward. We need at least one more forward. It's too reductive to say, well, we didn't win the league last season because we had Kai Havertz up front. That's a load of bollocks, if you ask me. Part of the reason why we nearly won the league was because we had Kai Havertz up front. We just don't have enough around him. And I think, like I said, I understand the discussion, but don't throw out the baby with the bathwater here. Get somebody else in. Share those minutes around. Play the 2 guys together. Add some more variety to your attacking play. Oh, you're facing a low block. Wow, let's give you 2 strikers to think about, rather than one guy on his own up front and us shooing the ball around. So I really don't understand why there is such, if there is, and I haven't seen too much of it. I've seen criticism, of course, but if there's animosity towards Kai Havertz, I don't get it at all. Don't get it. It's like people want him to be something that he's not.
Correct.
Let's accept him for what he is, and then address the other parts of the team that need it, so we can put those things together and be even better.
Yeah, I mean, after the Manchester United game, it got really ugly, very ugly. And we won't talk about that because we don't want to give that too much oxygen. But yeah, the criticism of him as a footballer. So before we shift onto opportunities, which is kind of, a positive point, I think, is, and look, see, Kai is the worst signing we've made. We didn't need him. The board messed up there. So
sorry to rush, but that's nonsense. I could name 20 signings we've made that are worse than him off the top of my head.
Yeah, I agree. And this is the thing. This is why I kind of defend him, because I think he's misunderstood. So is it fair then to say, based on what you're saying and knowing kind of how we've seen the team be deployed and injuries, and we do have a thin squad, which I think is a weakness. We have quantity, but the quality to match that starting 11 really dips. So is it a weakness of Mikel's management, strategy, objectives, to not have those additional options,
Yeah,
Andrew?
I think one of the weaknesses, and I love what Mikel Arteta has done. I think one of the weaknesses, if I'm going out and looking at this from 100 miles up, is that we have not invested in the forward line in the way that a big club should be. I don't think we spent, we brought Kai in as a number 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
Apart from that, who have we bought as a forward? Gabriel Jesus, Leandro Trossard. Who have we spent money on? Now, I know we've been lucky. We've been blessed to have Bukayo Saka, and we've had Gabriel Martinelli. But beyond that, we have not invested properly in our forward line. And whether that's Arteta, whether that's Edu, whether it's the owners, whether it's the market, whether it's a combination of all of those things, when you look at what we've spent in other areas of the pitch, I think we've nearly spent more on goalkeepers than we have on forward. I mean, genuinely, I'm not being funny.
No,
So
I know.
I think that is one of the weaknesses. And I feel like that has got to be addressed. If we want to really make another step forward, it's okay, Rush. We can disagree. It's fine. It's no problem. But I think that is a weakness for me, is how we're investing in the forward line.
Yeah, it is. It's really, for a team that's kind of known for, pedigree-wise, history-wise, we've had so many great players in the attack. And then, of course, the way we played in the previous 2 seasons, it is quite shocking, really. I mean, we've had more left backs on the bench the last few games than we have had, attacking players that we've gone into the market and invested in. Okay, so let's talk about opportunities. It is January, and the obvious one, of course, is transfers. You mentioned it at the top of the show, and we didn't dive into it too much because we were going to get to it. And, guys, I've just put some pics up of players. I'm not saying these are players I want to sign, so don't get too kind of crazy here. But, it is an opportunity. We're at, let me just check my calendar. It's January 23rd. We had some guests on this week who said that, Saka injury happened, December 20th-ish. We've had time to dip into the market. We had so many games in January, Andrew. What say you about the Arsenal Football Club's opportunities in particular, considering we're in a transfer window month?
I mean, we haven't taken that opportunity. The opportunity is there to bring in a player or, players to strengthen the squad at a key point in the season, and we haven't yet taken that opportunity. I accept 100% that there are market forces at stake. I think you, more than ever, have to be careful about how you spend your money, right? Make sure you've got the right guy and all the rest of it. But I struggle to deal with there's nobody out there. I don't believe that there isn't a player in the world out there that Arsenal can get during the January transfer window. Could it be more expensive than we want to make it? Yeah, probably. But yeah, I think sometimes you have to accept that the way a season goes forces you to compromise a little bit, right? So the value of a player to you, if you're talking about bringing him in the summer, it might be very different in January, because you have to convince his club to let him go in the middle of the season as well. This is why, somebody like SESKO, if he's the guy that they want, I don't know if they can get him in January, because Leipzig are, battling for a Champions League place in the Bundesliga. So what do they do if they let him go? Do they have somebody else they can bring in? I think all of those things are perfectly valid questions, but I just wonder if there are players at, clubs across Europe or even maybe a bit lower down in the Premier League who are good players and could do a job for Arsenal, if we really, really wanted to, could we get them? I feel like maybe we haven't really been, not that we haven't been trying. That sounds wrong, but we're maybe just a bit risk averse at times in the transfer market. And I think that is applicable as well to the forward line, that we are a bit risk averse. We're not prepared to push the boat out for a forward in the same way that we are for, a handsome Italian left back. It's like that. Can we apply that kind of drive to bringing in a forward?
Yeah, that handsome. Are you convinced by the handsome Italian left back?
Not yet. I think he's a good player. I don't doubt his talent. I obviously have some worries about his availability, his fitness. Those things I worry a little bit about. He is only 22 as well. He's almost the baby of the squad. I know that's kind of hard to believe, but he is basically the baby of the squad right now, apart from Lewis Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri. But maybe without those injuries, without those little problems that he has had, we wouldn't have seen the emergence of Lewis Skelly in the way that we have over the last couple of months in particular, where he's come through sort of under the radar because everyone was thinking about Nwaneri. Everyone was looking for him to come in and be the attacking guy, which is completely normal. But Lewis Skelly has kind of emerged as this sort of, oh my gosh, fully fledged young man who can basically do it all at left back, so so maybe there's some upside to the fact that Calafiori's been out injured, and we need as many good players as we can get. So I don't worry about what's going to happen with him. I would just like the club maybe to sort of say, right, let's be a bit decisive here, let's take a risk, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Have we been burned from the Nicolas Pepe, for example? Have we even been burned by the Willian or even the Lacazette to an extent, where we spent 55 million on Lacazette in the summer and then immediately spent 60 million on Aubameyang the next window, where it feels like maybe within the club itself there is this like, well, you can spend a lot on a forward player and maybe they won't give you the value for money. So we're waiting to see, to be 110% sure. I just don't think you can be 100% sure with any signing. I think sometimes you've got to take a chance. And I'd like to see us try that.
300 of you in live chat, hit that like button. We have Andrew, aka Arseblog here, the Podfather himself. Loving this conversation. Andrew, real quick before we move on to the final bit, is Mikel Merino a busted flush, or no? Jury's still out?
Jury's still out a little bit, but I think he's a good squad player. I think we saw, for example, the day when we beat Brentford away from home and he played in midfield and Declan Rice didn't play. That's kind of the value of a player like that in your squad. Mm-hmm. That's what he's there for, to be able to rest Rice, who's been having some injury issues. Is he going to be the kind of player that takes your breath away? Is he going to be the kind of player who gets you up off your seat? Probably not. But I think as a squad player, he's absolutely fine by me. Another discussion might be, could we have brought somebody in who raised the bar a little? But I think what's obvious is that Arteta wants a sort of specific kind of player in that position, right? So if you look at Xhaka, Havertz, Declan Rice, Merino, they're not all the same player, but if you can see how there's a through line between all of them, right? 3 of them are left-footed. They're all 6 foot plus, and they give presence, and their job is to get into the box late and score goals and give us more attacking threat from that position. So I'm hopeful we'll get some more moments from him over the course of what remains of this season.
Yeah,
but I get why people find him a bit underwhelming.
Yeah. And, adapting to the league isn't always easy for some players. It's really weird how some, are a duck to water and others aren't. Okay, now threat. Let's talk about the threats. These are external things. Of course, I'm sure you'll touch on injuries, but it could fall into a weakness, but also a threat because we can't control it. one of the things that I think that we have been a little better about, but not too good. And maybe it's in our negotiations, or it's the fact that, other clubs control the situation and just don't like our players. We don't seem to attract the type of money, funds that City or Liverpool do. And maybe that's something we can't control. So it is a threat, Andrew, or maybe it's something that we need to be better at. Maybe master the dark arts of transfers. We don't seem to sell assets well, but is that because of the quality of the asset? Hence, the threat is, other clubs aren't interested. They control that. Or does it fall into the weakness category?
I think it is reflective of the overall quality of the squad that you have, right? So if you're a squad that is struggling to finish in the top 6, as we were for a couple of seasons, I don't think too many people are going to be mad for your players. We saw that, struggling to sell established players, we couldn't do it. I think as we have got better as a club, we've been able to sell players for higher fees. So look at what we got for Eddie Nketiah last season. Look at what we got for Aaron Ramsdale. Look at what we got for Emile Smith-Rowe, even though I was sad to see him go. Look at what we got for those guys. So as we have got better, the fees that we have got have increased. So the more good players you have, the more clubs are going to be willing to spend on the players that they want to take them away. For me, the big threat is lack of tangible success. Because I think we have got some brilliant players in this team. We've got brilliant players, and we've got a really, really good team. And, I think that is worth pointing out. We're second in the league. We're third in the Champions League table. I just feel like these players also need to win things. They need to win things to be able to fulfill their ambitions at Arsenal. If they can do that, we can keep those players for as long as we want. If we're winning trophies, if we're winning the Premier League, and if we're, winning cups, and if we're, let's say, going all the way to the Champions League final, let's say even winning a Champions League final, players don't want to leave a club where they win things. But the best players, if they don't win things, will go to clubs where they can. And I think that is the big threat that we have for me. Because objectively, what Arteta has done and what Arsenal have done over the last couple of years has been, in inverted commas, successful, right? But without the trophies, without the tangible success to show for it, you leave yourself a little bit exposed. So that, for me, is the biggest threat. And that's an external threat, right? Because that is Real Madrid coming and saying, we'll take William Saliba. That's Barcelona saying, we'll have a bit of Bukayo Saka. I'm just throwing those out there as an example, right? That we have a much more difficult job of convincing those guys to sign new contracts and commit their futures unless we win things. And that's why winning things is so important in this era for Arsenal, in this particular iteration of Arsenal. I think it's just vital that we get one of the big trophies. Even a cup this year would have gone some way, but, winning the league or winning the Champions League to consolidate the progress we've made in the form of a trophy that they can take pictures with, and we can all celebrate, and they can have a parade, and we can be there or we can not be there, or we can go wherever it is around the world that everybody is, and they can go to their local bar where their Arsenal friends are, or their Arsenal bar, wherever it might be, and enjoy that moment and share that community, in the best way that I know how it can be shared. I just feel like without that, we leave ourselves vulnerable.
Do you think, with that same token, if Arsenal, now again, I'm just giving the name as an example, right? With the existential threat of Saliba, Real Madrid, the constants that we have to battle Gabriel, I would be worried about as well, who I think is having a phenomenal, tremendous season, better than Saliba this year. I don't think we get credit for stealing Odegaard at the price we did for Real Madrid. I think those things kind of get forgotten a little bit. Do you think signing someone like an Isaac or, I don't know, SESKO, I think he's an in-demand player across multiple clubs. And I use names like a Camavinga, or I'm just giving an example, Andrew. Do you think signing a top-tier A-lister player would show Saliba, Saka, I don't think we have to worry about, but I say that, loosely, I don't know. Do you think that keeps them at the club for an extended period of time without the trophy?
I mean, it would certainly help, because it would show that the ambition to create a squad that's capable of going the distance is there, that the owners are willing to invest, that, okay, we've come close and we didn't get there, but let's try again. Let's not just go, oh, well, we didn't win it. We'll just rest on our laurels and hope we can do a bit better next season. I think if you come really close and you don't get over the line, you have to examine why that is. This is why I think there's a bit of frustration about this season. Because I think if you look at last season, and if you were to ask somebody, what is the one thing that you felt Arsenal could do with a bit more of? Even though we scored a load of goals, it would be just that little bit of X factor in attack, right? Because we didn't have it when we went to Bayern Munich. We lost 1-0. And we didn't have it in a few games last season that might have got us the extra point or two that could have got us over the line. I think that's what I was looking for in the summer. And in the end, we got Raheem Sterling on loan as our attacking signing. And with all due respect to him, and I'm very sorry, I kind of feel sorry for him. It's a bit sad to see a guy who was a really great player just look so far from the level required. I think, you can ask questions about that. Whereas I think if, let's say let me make a pure hypothetical, right? SESKO is available in the summer for 60 million. But you decide you'll pay 80 million for him in January, assuming they will let him go. Even if it doesn't work out the way you would want, I don't think anybody could say, well, you'd probably get credit for trying, right? I'm not even saying SESKO is the guy that we want to go for. If you were to ask me, who I take it to be Alexander Isak all day long, but is Alexander Isak gettable? Don't think so. Certainly not in January, right? But if you try at least and address the issues in a meaningful way, you buy yourself a bit of understanding. So signings can send a message to the players that you have already, that even if you don't get over the line, even if you don't get the trophy this season, here's a guy who can help. Here's a really good player that we've spent a significant amount of money on. We've convinced him to come here. It will help. Why wouldn't it? But you'd wonder if you were a player, and certainly you'd wonder if you were a fan, what problem did they think they were solving with Raheem Sterling?
Yeah.
So
it always seems as well that they always say they know what they want, who they want. They've identified their targets. Real quick before I let you go, do you think losing Edu has had an impact, Andrew?
I don't know. I was asked that question today on the Arsecast as well, and my answer was, I don't know, because, Edu was like the conductor of an orchestra in a way, right? That there are a lot of people behind the scenes who work in recruitment at Arsenal, a lot of people who are responsible for helping deals get done and for identifying targets and doing all of that work. But ultimately, he was the guy who was, on the phone, making contact with other clubs. He had that stature, didn't he? He had that kind of charisma. You've met Edu. He's a very charming guy. a very, very charming guy, and he's got a big personality. So what we don't know is, let's say, if Arsenal have tried to bring anybody in and it hasn't worked because Jason Ato, who's doing his job at the moment, is not up to the task. We don't know that, you know. I believe he's very highly rated. I believe he's a very capable guy. But if it emerges, let's say, that Arsenal tried to buy this guy, that guy, and nobody took Jason Ato seriously, then you could say, yes, for sure, we've missed Edu. But for now, I just don't know. I can't say. I hope not.
Okay,
but,
so
days of the transfer window left, because it closes on, I didn't know this, it closes on February the 3rd. So we do have 10 days still, so let's see what
happens. I can't stand it. I just want it shut so we can move on with the season. So as you know, having been on the show before, you get an exit statement. I'm going to do a couple of housekeeping things, let you go first. Andrew, what is your parting statement to the Squaddies, to the Arsenal universe? Because this is probably the last time we're going to talk before the end of the season. Maybe not. But what is your parting statement to everyone?
I was reminded of something before we played the North London derby. And it was something that an old friend of mine, now no longer with us, unfortunately, he ran a blog called Cunha. I'm sure some of your viewers and listeners remember Dave very well. And what he always used to say was guns outwards. That even when things are not going great, you know, we have to assemble and point those guns outwards. And we did that for the North London derby. There was a big atmosphere and the crowd got behind the team, and we pulled off a good win after a couple of really difficult games. And I think we can all be frustrated. We can all want the club to do more. We can all have our issues with certain players or the way certain things are managed. But ultimately, we should all be pulling in the same direction as well. And when it comes right down to it, the enemy is not within, the enemy's out there. So guns outwards, and let's see where we go in the second half of the season.
You know what? Screw the housekeeping stuff. That is the perfect place to leave. Brilliantly said. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks, Squaddies, for tuning in. Go follow him. You know where he is. You've been living under a rock if you haven't. At Arseblog, he and James, the GOATs. Thank you so much for your time. Squaddies, thanks for tuning in. For those listening on replay, thank you as well for making us part of your day. Don't forget to tell your loved ones you love them. And don't forget to go visit Dan for the This Is London event, which is at the Hippodrome tomorrow. I thought I'd get that in for Potsy. All right. Thank you, guys. At ease.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.